Well, it's been about 2 months since my family and I moved from Romney, West Virginia to Morgantown. And moving is a stressful thing. Thought about some counseling for my dog, George. George hasn't taken the move well at all. We have two dogs. One is Bella, one is George. Both of them are kind of hunting sort of hounds. Love to sniff and smell stuff. Okay, so here's the scene. We're in the house, and I say this: "Do you need to go outside?" And we get the doggy happy dance. So I go to the sliding glass door, I open it, and Bella is zoom out into the backyard. George zoom out onto the deck. And then he turns around and stares at me like, "What are you doing? Letting me out like this?" You see, back in Romney, we didn't have a big fenced-in backyard. Whenever we took the dogs out, we'd have to chain them up, so they only had like a few feet to roam. But here in Morgantown, we have a large fenced-in backyard. And so my dog Bella is just loving it. She's running the fences, she's smelling stuff, but George is running to the deck and then turning around and staring at me with those anxious puppy eyes. What is going on here? And you don't understand it all, because in my backyard there is the occasional rabbit and squirrel and mole. It is the equivalent to having a backyard full of Krispy Kreme donuts, I'm telling you. George should be on it, but he runs out to the deck and he turns around and he stares at me. He will not turn aside. He'll stare right at me. He will not turn and go down into the backyard, even though I think it will be a glorious experience. I have no idea what is in his head, what is in his habit or in his experience that is telling him, "I can't go there." He won't turn aside. In this story from Exodus, we have Moses, who turns aside, sees out of the corner of his eye a bush that's on fire. That's not unusual. In the desert, you might have a lightning strike, and like an old Christmas tree, a bush will poof, catch on fire and burn for a little bit and then simmer down. Moses keeps noticing that this bush keeps burning, but it's not consumed. He's curious, and so he goes to check out what's happening here. And then here's where the story gets kind of interesting for me personally. Moses talking to the bush. Bush is talking to him. God says, "I'm inviting you, Moses, to go to Pharaoh. Tell him to let my people go. I've seen them. I've heard them. I want to free them. You're the one to help me." And Moses has a moment of personal crisis. He's turned aside to look and see what's happening here. He's turned aside to look and see. But now he's got to turn from something inside of himself if the story is going to continue. If the story is going to continue, and by that I mean the story of the entire Bible is going to continue, Moses is going to have to he's going to have to turn towards something inside of him, and this is what it is. Moses says to God's invitation, "But who am I?" He is saying, Who am I? that I could accept this call? Who am I that I could do what you're calling me to do? Oh, great bush in the desert, who am I? And I kept looking for an answer. I think I know who Moses is, but who's God going to say that Moses is? I keep looking for that answer and I never get it. Instead, what we get is not who Moses is, but we get who God is. Moses asks, if I go and tell the people that you've asked this to happen, that you've asked that they be set free, that you ask that they follow me into a new land, if I go and tell them, who am I going to say that you are? And God says to Moses, I am who I am. It's not so much, Moses, about who you are. It's about who I am. And that is enough. That's enough for Moses to take the next step and to follow God's invitation to be a part of this liberating movement. I was struggling with this text this week. It was messing with me. And I felt like it was asking me some questions. And so I'm going to mess with you a little bit and ask you the questions that were asked of me. Here's a question. Am I willing? Are you willing to turn aside? I know you've got plans. Are you willing to turn aside and to be interrupted by God? Is a holy God worth your attention? Is the holy cause of justice and compassion and making some things right in the world worth your attention? Is who you are, who you think you are, getting in the way of the call of the great I am? Can you turn aside from your glorious plans, from your own self-doubts? And can you hear the call of a God who longs to set some people free?